So we've got a lot of founders in the audience, a lot of founders who are here trying to basically figure out the path, multiple stages. We've got a panel of founders who've had, let's just say, have gone through the journey. Is it character building? Is it a character building journey as a founder?
Definitely.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're going to basically focus the conversation across a couple of areas. One is lessons learned in the founder journey. There's a feedback loop. I apologize. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Apologies, we'll share it. The hot air is oversubscribed. I apologize, sir. Apologies for that. That's on my side. Okay, so let's start off. So Daniel worked for a small company called Drata. How's it going?
Yeah, it's great. We are still young in our journey, even though those that don't know us, Drata, we launched the product in early 2021. We work in the compliance space. We try to automate. We do automate people's security and compliance programs. Always working better every day. But yeah.
So I guess first question is, and to you and Rehan, think about this space. The cybersecurity space industry is a $100+ billion market. Rehan, you've built a number of companies in this space. You've done this. What was the opportunity for Drata, and then what did you see as an opportunity in Security.ai?
Yeah, the big opportunity as an operator, time and time again, as a serial entrepreneur, is you want to innovate and you want to build products for customers and help people in the industry. And time again, especially in a B2B space, you always run into the compliance hammer, and it keeps hitting you on the top of your head. And all of us have gone through it, and none of us want to do it. And so I think it was that aha moment of, all right, I think it's time to help our peers and automate this problem for the industry. So that was really the birth of the story, and we went to work, and we're here today, and it's doing well.
Fantastic. Rehan, you've built multiple businesses in the space. Are you a glutton for punishment? Is there something exciting about cyber? Like, what drives you to continue to build companies in space? Probably more relevant is, what do founders need to do to be able to understand what the opportunity is? What are signals that you look for, or insights that you had that you decided you wanted to found a third company?
I think the first thing is that in cyber is particularly interesting because it evolves very fast. Everywhere there's a software running, there is some kind of an issue that you need to address it. So it's a very broad market, and it doesn't mature. It's not like networking, you do some standards and it matures. So you always can actually find a way, reason to innovate. Like you can say, look, this is the new thing. Now it's AI, for instance. Everything around AI and data and this whole new stack is going to build. That's the reason, part of the reason that you actually in cyber, you're going to see new companies get formed. That was the reason that we started, and the group that I work with, we started the company. The opportunity that we saw was that data, which is literally the heart of any companies, the entire engine runs on data because data represents your business, essentially. Data is not but just zeros and ones. It represents what you do, regardless of which company you are. And that's what hackers go after.
Right.
That's what regulators go after. That's where the issues happen. That's where the mistakes happen. In fact, sometimes that's where your internal employees go after.
Right.
So the opportunity that we saw, how can you actually provide, first of all, the full visibility around structured, unstructured streaming data in a very complex environment that typically a large org has, and how you automate the entire set of controls, not just security, but privacy and governance and compliance, which is a very important topic, which Drata does. And that's the opportunity, I think, going after now. Along the journey, AI shows up. AI was there, but large language models show up, and the need to use this data safely is simply exploded.
Right.
And so that's made the journey to be a lot more fun.
Fantastic. Each of you have got a few things in common, which is that you've all built companies and have had successful acquisitions. I was speaking to my friend Catherine Edmonds, who's a local lawyer, and explained to me that there's a tremendous amount of I would say, both a pretty adversarial process when you go through that acquisition. I think, Bruno, you started Sumo Logic. There's a bunch of lessons learned in building that company, number one. So question to you, and then to Kari is, you took Sumo Logic to IPO, and then also to acquisition. First thing, in building a company like Sumo Logic, what are some of the lessons that you learned that now that you're looking at your next venture, and I'm very excited to eventually hear about that in future when I give you a term sheet. But after that, what are some of the lessons that you've learned that you are going to either do less of or more of as you move forward?
Wow, where do I start?
Is this group therapy? Is this,
Yeah,
we're
this
getting
is,
started,
you
yeah.
know,
Okay.
You might not want to hear the private side of that. But I always think, as I sort of go through my life and career, and when I talk to people who are younger than me and trying to get onto the journey, is that like you learn from failures far more than you learn from successes. And you know, Sumo Logic, for all intents and purposes, has done so many things very, very well. But we've learned so many things along the way. You know, I can focus on a few here. First is, you know, focus really frees you. I used to argue with a lot of people inside the company that no really is the most powerful word you have at your disposal. You know, when you're starting early, you have to win a small subset of the market you want to eventually go after, because you have fewer resources, fewer people, fewer mental cycles to do the work, and so you have to focus. And we've certainly focused and then not focused, and you know, taken a step back and things like that. But focus in general, I think, is one of the most important things for entrepreneurs to adopt, and to really kind of understand what is the long-term goal and how do you take small incremental steps until you can actually claim that goal.
Kari?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. You stole my bit here. Like I would say focus is also something. So I had a company before about 10 years ago, and then now with Linear, we took some learnings from that. And I think a couple learnings one was the focus that I think when you're building a product in the early days, you encounter all kinds of potential users or customers, and whenever you encounter a new one, you get excited. It's like, oh wait, this could be like for them as well. And then like, that's great, maybe one day, but like there's the danger of you try to like start building stuff for too many people, like too many different kinds of people, different industries, different type of segments, whatever. So I think like what we did initially with Linear was like we wanted to specify very clearly who is the like the ideal customer at this point in time. And like for us, it was, so we make an issue tracking project management tool. And back 5 years ago, it was like early stage software startup. And that's like a small company, like maybe 10 people or something. That's our like very initial customer. And then we also like made sure that we can maintain the focus in the first year by like actually putting the product behind a wait list. And with the wait list, we asked people a few questions of like, why do you want to use the product? And then that way we could build a product that is like kind of very focused for a certain group of people. And we could always invite more of that kind of people, but we didn't have to extend the product a lot. Like, for example, like we only supported Google Auth for the first year. So like you can use the product if your company didn't use Google, whatever it's called these days, like the email and stuff. But like we added it eventually, but that's like an example. What the focus means is like you need to like really define the things like who are you targeting and how you're gonna what you're building to them. And I think the other way to check on yourself is also to ask like, is this, whenever someone asks you to do something or the customer asks you for something, you kind of like can think about is this important? And then the second question is like, is this important to do now? Or could we do this later? And if it's not important to do now, you probably can just wait. And like it's kind of maybe controversial, but I think some of the security stuff, for example, is like that. Like security is important, and like even from the beginning, but the compliance part maybe is not important in the first days of your business. Like you shouldn't start there. You should only go there once you actually have like customers and like revenue and those kind of things. So yeah, like I agree that like the focus is like the most important thing.
Drata has made that easier. So if you are a founder and want to basically get compliance early, you could basically do that, right? Okay. One of the things, a common piece of feedback that a lot of VCs will give in response, and I've heard this from founders who, you know, I've given advice or guidance to, is like the feedback. Well, it's a really crowded space, right? So I was a advisor to a little company called Zoom that was in a very, very competitive space, right? Funded incumbents in WebEx, investable outcomes with WebEx going to Cisco, GoToMeeting, et cetera, and definitely not the highest priority for a CIO to deploy a new video conferencing solution in the enterprise. But some of us crazy people decided, actually, it's a better architecture and a better solution. Each of you have been in a space which has been quite crowded, or there has been sizable incumbents. So what goes into your thinking to be able to do that? That's, I think, specific to a founder. Bruno, maybe if you could go first, and then I'll ask the others if you could.
Sure. I'll reflect a little bit about our journey and generalize it. Sumo Logic was a log management, cloud-native log management technology that we built started in 2010. And that was somewhat crowded space. There was a bunch of log management tools, many on-prem, whatnot, but we were at the front of the wave of the secular shift towards the cloud. And so as we looked at, and as I generally look at, okay, so how do I go into a crowded space that looks crowded, but find my own sort of place where I can win and build a business from? So, largely multiple dimensions can be looked at here. But first is like, what problem are you solving? Once you pick a problem or a product, whatever you want to call it, then you say, okay, for what technology segment am I going to solve this problem? Okay, we were at the front of the way of the cloud, so we were going to go after the cloud workloads. And then you say, okay, what kind of customer am I going to serve? That could be a vertical, it could be digital versus not digital, cloud native versus not cloud native. We picked cloud native digital customers that every step of the way reduced the focus of the company. And then when we looked at that space, boy, there was no one there. And so we could start there, build the technology, prove out the value, and then from there, you could look laterally and move along the dimensions to take on other markets that might have had a competitor in there, but now we've got a strength and we can move from there.
Okay. Rehan?
Yeah, I think the example that you gave, I think Zoom,
Yeah.
I think there are certain markets in which the TAM is huge and human experience can actually really matter.
Right.
And which means humans can make a choice to say, look, video is slightly better. Or even to log in, I don't have to put a passcode. You click and you go. And that can make a huge difference.
It's crazy.
It's crazy,
That
right?
basically,
Yeah.
the first
I mean,
5 minutes of a WebEx call,
Absolutely.
it was like, can you hear me? And
Yeah.
like, that doesn't basically happen. It's
Exactly.
Like, okay.
Now, while you're doing that, you have to see that fundamentally, an incumbent can just easily move. And if it can move, better not go there.
Right.
You're going to be squashed.
Right.
So I think, and to a distant viewer, it looks like it's crowded. But somebody who's coming from the industry, they have the nuanced understanding, and that's where the secret sauce is, the tip of the spear.
Right.
From a distance, it looks like Zoom, WebEx, Teams, but why can the others suck?
Right.
But somebody who's building it new, that inside, if you change the architecture, the way to do things, it's not easy for an incumbent to come and transplant the entire thing. This is not possible.
Right.
That understanding is the killer understanding. Right. And that makes a difference. And we have seen that over and over again. You could say it's a crowded market, it is incumbent there, but
Right.
You change the formula underneath, the experience will change or the value will change, or that incumbent, there's no chance they're catching up onto it. Just where it happens.
Daniel?
Excellent. Yeah, again, Zoom is such a good example. I remember a super early adopter myself, and it was just, you could tell it's better.
Yeah.
And then look what happened. So for us, it was, we had this idea, and it was through a pain that I felt. Serial entrepreneur, this is my 8th company I've started, so seen it time and time again. And it was about, all right, it's time to go solve this, let's do that. And so you
Can
have
I just stop you there for a second?
Oh, yeah.
There's multiple companies, and you say to yourself and your co-founders, guys, let's go solve compliance.
Yeah.
Like, what is that, how does your co-founders respond to that? No offense.
No, yeah, it's...
Because if you've been in cybersecurity, like Rehan and I, there's like, oh yeah, we've totally seen this market. But you sold your last company to Instructure, which I wasn't a customer of. It was not in this space. And you're like, guys, let's go sort out compliance. We're going to build a company around this.
Yeah.
Seriously, just give us a little bit of insight.
Sure. It was about, there was actually one of our customers said it, and we loved it so much, we actually put it on a billboard in New York and San Francisco.
Okay.
And it was, y'all make boring shit easy. And so, so I think that's a pattern, especially in some of our investment investors
Right.
in their portfolios, they kind of were attracted to that. These very boring manual processes that take a lot of human cycles, how do you automate them and make it easier? And so from the outside in, compliance, I'll be the first to say, as a founder of the compliance company, like, compliance sucks. It's the process in the middle that we're all these highly skilled, trained engineers, security members, and we're taking screenshots all day. And it's like, all right, I think there's a better way to do this. So that was kind of the story there.
Competition-wise, it's just like
Yeah,
crowded
so
market otherwise.
On the competition, we had this idea. I didn't know about, actually. I knew there was like larger players, ServiceNow, SAP, things like that. But on the lower side, I actually was very unaware. And we had this idea, and we went and we studied, and we talked from everyone from a 1-2 person startup to the CISO of Charles Schwab, and what is this pain and problem? And during that discovery, you start finding competitors, and you go, okay. And to us, where I think the biggest thing that we saw was, we're going to go talk to 20 to 50 customers of each one of those competitors and understand what they love about it and understand what they hate about it. And from there is put our own spin on it. So that was really how I've done a lot of times in my career. Is there's every idea as a founder. There's I think there's a saying like 8 other people in the world are already working on it.
Yeah.
So there's already going to be competitive pressure there, and it's just about how do you approach the market, how do you do it differently, better, cheaper, and really put a innovative spin on it. And I've always tried to, in the B2B apps or companies that I've built, it's always about reducing human interaction and making that process easier. So the humans that are focused on product, they can actually go focus on the thing they are doing.
Got it. All companies have built lessons. A key part of building a company is the team. Kari, to you first. Second company, I believe. First one was sold to Coinbase. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you think about team formation? And part of the relevance of that question is the fact that there's not exactly a ton of data scientists that you're going to bring in to basically build out an AI company in this space. Yes, there's a lot more infrastructure. The LLMs are out there for you to be able to use, but talent acquisition is one of the hardest problems at this stage. How should founders think about building out a founding team? What are the things that you want them to take away?
All of us founders, we worked in some of these like hypergrowth companies and like Coinbase, Airbnb, Uber, and you kind of like see what happens when you hire, I don't know, like you are like 20 people person company, and then you hire like 100 people more in 1 year. And it's like what happens, like majority of the companies always new. They have no clue what's going on. Like no one knows like what their job even is. Like everything's changing all the time. It's very like disruptive process. And like granted, all of these companies are successful and like made it. So it's not like impossible to survive, like be productive that way. But like when we started Linear, we had like much more different thinking with this. That we saw that like in our experiences, whenever we built something, we always built something better when the team was smaller and better. And so like in the very early days, it's almost like you need to think like, obviously there's founders, that's like one stage. It's like who are the founders? Like, do you have some like overlapping skill sets or like some kind of, or like complementing skill sets? And then it becomes like, well, who is the first hire? And I think we went maybe like 6 months or more than like almost like a year before we hired anyone.
Wow.
And the first hire we hired is like someone we knew from Coinbase. We knew that like he's really good. Like so, I think it's kind of like the first hire kind of like sets the standard in some ways. Like what are you going to hire next? And I think like a lot of people say like the first 10 hires are the most critical ones. So you shouldn't like rush hiring people, like especially the first 10 ones, because they're the ones that set the standard. Like they set the initial DNA for any team. Like if it's engineering, it's how they do engineering. If it's sales, it's how they do sales. If it's like support, whatever. It's like those first people, like you want the highest quality person, like the best fitting people as possible. And then like it might take time, and we took our time. So like we've been doubling every year, but we started from 1, and then we went to like 3,
right,
and then to 6, and then to 15, and today, after 5 years, we're like 55.
Right.
But like our thinking has always been that it's not about the team formation. It's not about how many people you have. It's like how good the people are.
Right.
And that's like where we focus much more. And one of the things we do differently with the hiring is like we actually require everyone to do like a few-day work trial with us, which is like a actual project that they work with us. We pay for the time they spend on it, but it's like in any function in engineering, it's like they build something, they build some kind of feature, and like in design, it's like they design something, and sales, they like, or some of these other non-technical roles, there might be some other prompts that we give them. But that gives us indications like how they work and what their style is and what their approach is. And usually those prompts are like fairly vague, which is the case in startups, like things are not very defined.
Right.
We give you a problem, you kind of have to figure out like what to do about it.
Got it.
And so that's been our way, which is kind of different, I think, from most companies. And we don't really have that many managers either. So it's like we only have few people that technically have a manager title. We hire more like senior people that are more like self-directed.
So Bruno, you're on your next chapter. How do you think about a founding team, an early team? What do you look for? What do you not look for?
I'm probably just working. I have a non-standard view of this. I think one of the things that really matters, and some of the things that you said really resonate with me, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so we all have to have a good strategy, but if you don't build the right culture in the company early, you will not be able to execute your strategy. And I think a lot of startups start by assuming culture, right? It gets built from the founders up, and it's not talked about, thought about, and it evolves, and then it devolves. I think it's really important to think about how do you want to work? Whom do you want to work with? How are you going to make sure that you're all marching in the same direction? A colleague of mine now says the phrase, hire slow, but fire fast. Okay. And it's really important to really think about who you're bringing in, and then how quickly are you admitting your mistakes and making changes that you need to make. I have a spreadsheet now that has more than 50 roles that I know that are going to be slotted into the company that I start probably a year from now over the next 3 years. Like I think very long term. And I also think about pulling in roles that are typically in tech startups thought about as much later, much earlier. And the reason for that is because I like to set up foundations on things that later need a lot of rework, like a bunch of financial engineering and things like that. I like to do that from the get-go so that the organization learns how to think that way, to be more efficient, so I don't have to pay the penalty of undoing stuff 2 years down the line that is costing me 5 persons headcount than what I could have solved with half an FTE at the early stage. So I have a very sort of like long view on hiring, right. But I think I'm not necessarily the standard in the field.
Rehan?
Yeah, I think much has been said about, frankly, the people. I mean, especially if you're doing any technology company, it's actually just the people. There's nothing else actually. And that's your company at the end of the day. Okay. That's it. There's no factory. There's nothing. Mostly that's the case. And there, it really matters for the function. You try to actually have the best in the class, whatever that function is. Now, you're not going to always get that. Not going to happen, right. Because look, you're competing for the talent, and you're not the only company out there in Silicon Valley, right? So having said that, you try that, then you of course try to look for not just the competence in terms of cultural fit, and that's difficult to assess if you're bringing somebody cold. If you know somebody, it's a different story. Our story is very different than what you mentioned. We started literally within first month, we were 65 people.
Whoa, okay.
Because we knew.
Okay.
Where to shoot. Right? So, okay. And these are the people we have worked with in some capacity we had worked with before.
Right.
But then the company grows. Now it's 700 people. So now you're looking at, you don't know.
Right.
Right. Everyone directly. How do you actually have same culture and that's the tough part. When you transition, that is the tough part. But also pruning is very important. It's not the hiring only.
Right.
A tree is healthy when you prune it. Otherwise, not healthy. Or humans die if some cells don't die, right? That's called cancer. So,
Trying to keep an upbeat mode here, but okay. So, one of the things that has defined Drata as a unicorn and as a company that's, I would say, really has found its footing both on a product market fit standpoint, but also on a go-to-market perspective, right? So, I mean, the last reading at AWS reInvent last year is that you've transacted, tens of millions of dollars through the AWS marketplace, for example. If we go back to kind of culture, you grew really quickly. You also raised substantial financing with high-quality investors. Talk about the scaling issue, or talk about the hiring quality, like what the standards that you put into place. 7th company now, so you must have had some red lines that you want to make sure weren't crossed.
Yeah, Drata, a lot of points here. Obviously, focus and the right team members. I remember meeting Adam, my co-founder, our CEO, a decade plus ago now, and we started a company.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and former rocket scientist, NASA, all the things that you could imagine.
Yeah.
But when we decided to go on that journey and start the company, I remember I actually invited him and his now wife, it was a fiance at the time, over for dinner with my wife and myself. And it was like, if we're going to do this, this is a marriage. This isn't a partnership. And we all got to make sure our wives are compatible, and we're going to be in each other's lives for the rest of our lives. So that was, I think, and then obviously now his we never really talk about it, but our other co-founder, Adam's brother, you would never know internally. Nevertheless, just the very similar upbringing and culture values. I mean, different upbringings, but values, how we think about life, how we think about companies. So that was super critical. But on the team is, when we started Drata, there was this founding group, and then we had a bunch of founding engineers and salespeople, and it was the best of the best from the company prior. So I'm very lucky in that nature that we had the success roughly a decade ago in building that company, the last one, and we were able to start with the best of the best from that company. So we had about 15 when we started, which was it was like we had a 7-year-old startup on day one, which was very which led to, I think, acceleration in product development and sales and just the motion of the whole company, which led to the success and the dollars that we raised and everything else like that. But I would say Adam and I are super aligned on that. Culture is probably the number one, not only value at our business, but super weapon of our business. It is the people. And we always say culture is our values plus behavior equals our culture. So we have company values that I think are formed to make this company successful, but the behaviors of us, of our people, I think are the multiplying factor. So a unique thing that we did that I'd encourage all you to perhaps think about is there's cultural values. If you had an office, maybe there are these posters on the wall, or it's on the website, you talk about them. But we actually established these things called rules, or the Drata rules, and they're even live on the website. We go through them in the interview process, and these are expected behaviors of the employees that come in. And while some of them are pretty aggressive and maybe makes you uncomfortable, I think to do what we've done, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
With that growth of year one, obviously it started with those 15. It grew to about 100 year one, and then it went from 100 to 300 and 300 to 600, pretty much. And everything that we did, almost every 6 months, maybe 6 months to a year, everything you did in process-wise, it would break, it wouldn't work. So everything we're doing now today, we have to continue to reevaluate from 6 months ago or 12 months ago that didn't work. So at that hyper scale, that was a lesson that I've never done before, that we've been learning along the way, is always question yourself of the process you have, the people you have, understanding the stage you're in. Someone that was an amazing hire, those first 100, maybe they're not the right fit at this 600 person stage. So,
Go for it. Yeah, please.
I think if you, in the beginning, just like I said, 15, I just want to add on to it. If you worked with some people before, man, value it. There's no time to experiment there, right?
Right.
Value it. I think we got lucky that the team that we had,
right.
we had worked over 3-4 companies before. And for that team to come together and then said, let's do it again, well, that was a blessing.
Right.
And that was the secret sauce, I would say, to actually ramp fast. And within the first year, the company got like awarded the best startup of RSA, the best company at RSA, right?
Amazing.
It was not possible because the team had worked together before. You knew exactly who was really good at what.
Right.
And they're comfortable, and the teamwork was impeccable. But it becomes harder when, of course, you get out of that, and you, of course, have to bring people you've not worked with. And that's where I think the importance of the initial foundation of the culture becomes very, very important.
Bruno and then Tikari, if there is one thing that you will not allow to happen again in this company because of the learnings you've had, what would that be? And remember, you're talking to a VC, so it's no holds barred. You can say whatever you wish.
I'll carry forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's transcribed through AI, by the way. It's a real story, yeah.
Carry forward the topic of go-to-market. I've seen this at multiple companies before that were startups, and even at Sumo Logic at the beginning, there were a bunch of these conversations about, is this going to be an engineering-led company or a sales-led company?
Okay.
I think that is such a bad place to be in, and it shows you that there's something broken in how the people in the company are thinking about the business, right?
Sorry, can I be more specific? So you're saying don't ask those questions? Or
don't ask those questions.
Don't ask those questions.
There is no engineering-led versus sales-led. You're building a company where its product is being built so that it can be sold. Collaboration, alignment is essential, right? If you create a rift between those two groups, it's over. It's going to be stumbling all along and unlikely to be a good outcome. So that's, again, back to the part of the culture, to making people think about that they're not part of a sort of unit team, they're part of a bigger whole, and all of those things. And that kind of stuff, I think, as you kind of sniff that out, hear things happening in dark corners of your offices, you got to quash that quickly and make sure that the values are followed and set up the rules and things like that.
Okay. Kari? Other than not using Carta, that's a separate question.
I can say something to this. Like, yeah, I think like with our previous company, we didn't get that far as we are with this company. So I think that there isn't too many lessons there. But my feeling is that there's a lot of this kind of pull or certain things that happens when you're growing, and it's like there might be investors telling you things, or like or someone else, or you read the news or something. Like there's a lot of things like telling you that you're supposed to do something in a certain way, or that this is the best practice. But then I think like our case, we always found that like it's better just to think about these things yourself, and it's like what is true to you and what is true to your company. I think like we started the company like before COVID, and I think one of the things, I think back then like people were raising a really big rounds and like during like the last few years and spending a lot of money. And we kind of like took the opposite approach, because kind of I saw that before, like a decade ago, that this happened.
Right.
And I think like it's not sustainable, that eventually the valuations, they're just too high. And what happened is the public markets came down, the interest rate went up. And then now everyone's like hurting because they went too far with their ambition, like too early. And they're like sometimes trapping themselves and the company in this space. So like what we did, like we always, each round we raised, like we try to like, what is like a reasonable valuation here? And then raise that. And then we also like managed to actually, we haven't spent any money. So we raised 50 million so far, and we still have 50 million left.
Wow.
So we, like these 5 years, we haven't actually spent anything. And the reason is like, well, we were able to get to this stage, but also it gives me the power of like, I'm not in the investor's control.
Yeah.
Like if they're there to help us, and whoever I bring in as an investor, I want to like make sure we are aligned with this. That like I'm scaling the company, but I'm scaling it the way I want to scale it. I'm not scaling it the way that other companies are scaling their companies. So I think that was like an important lesson for me. Is like you as a founder, you should be in control of the company, and
don't let the market and the narrative define what you want to be able to do.
And so then that way it's like, it's kind of like protecting yourself, like protecting the company from the market or from the like changes in the market. So I think like for us to win in this space, like we need to keep going and not be like I think like there's this like people hire a lot of people, then they do layoffs, and then a year later they hire more people again, and then they do layoffs. To me, it just seems like kind of like a crazy flip-flopping between the modes.
Right.
And like we more take an approach is like, okay, what do we actually need right now, and let's do that. But like, let's not like kind of overshoot, and then we find ourselves in a place that we are not happy with.
Rehan, red line that you're saying, I haven't done this, I'm not going to do this again.
Man, that list is very long, so it's very hard to pick one.
There's drinks in the evening. That's yeah, but you got 30 seconds.
No, I think it's generally it's going to be around people at the end of the day, right? So you tend to sometimes make mistakes around that, and often you can sometimes overshoot.
Right.
You may get impressed, or you can say, look, that role, if we can bring that kind of a team in the mix, especially I would say on GTM side,
Right.
exact level, I would say, in the previous companies, right? So I think you want to make sure that you pay special attention to while you're bringing team members, and the fit evaluation has to be there.
Okay.
That's the most, I think, most things I think you have to care about.
Fantastic. I'm just, no red lines because you're in your 7th company, so I'm just going to do that. What is, just tell us, what do we expect to see in the months ahead with Drata that you can reveal? Remember, you're not a public company yet.
Yeah.
And so.
Just more and more automation around your security compliance needs, trying to get to that. I view it as an asymptote. How close can I get to 100%? We'll never get there, but I'm going to try to get as close as possible.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, lots of learnings there. I really want to thank all of you for your time and for your insights, and I think a lot of valuable insights that people in the audience took. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Good luck on your journeys ahead. Thank you.